Yeah.
All right. So welcome. Uh, I'm recording partly so I can remember stuff because I don't always remember stuff, and partly because we won't have a fourth guide, but Beth suggested that Natalie can be kind of a traffic cop, and so we're going to want to be able to let her watch this video. So
Yeah, Beth casually mentioned yesterday, I think that the cemetery lady said there was 50 maybe so far.
mhm. Yeah,
So,
50. So that would be like 17 in each group, which is a big group, but it's doable.
yeah.
I was just saying before you logged on that we'll probably need to use those little loudspeaker packs in the South Burying Ground and the Hill Burying Ground because of traffic noise. Probably won't need them in Sleepy Hollow, but that was just a thought that popped into my head. Um, don't like to use those in the cemeteries, but with a group this size, I don't really think it's practical not to use it, or to be people aren't going to be able to hear us. Um, so the other question that we were starting to discuss, Amy count on a little early, was the order that we're going to do the cemetery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, since these people are cemetery geeks, where I would, and we're going to have 3 hours. I'm thinking we will do all three, South Hill and Sleepy Hollow.
Mhm.
And when I first drafted this script a few years ago, I drafted it chronologically. So start at Hill, then go to South, then go to Sleepy Hollow. But that's a lot of extra walking. And I've also done it starting at South and then Hill and then Sleepy Hollow. And I don't think people have too much trouble understanding that even though we go to Sleepy Hollow second, that it's the old, or go to Hill second, that it's the oldest. What do you think? Okay. Um, um, any thoughts?
I mean,
Maybe you've been
I
having.
think all of us know how to, no matter what order we have to do it in, I feel we know how to make the bridges. I guess my question is logistically, how do you think how should we do it? Like, who should go where to start, and how do we pass each other? And I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
'Cause
Amy, you mentioned that before. Did you have some ideas about that?
Um, yeah, that it's going to be a challenge in the respect that, it is a lot of walking. We're going to be kind of like on our own devices. I'm not sure. I mean, anybody that's anywhere anyone starts, they're going to have to take their group all the way to Sleepy Hollow first, or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe there could be two groups, Sleepy Hollow, or maybe give a brief
oh,
introduction at South, or I don't know. I'm not
yeah.
sure.
What if that's a good idea? What if I don't know, could this work? Could we put two groups in South just to kind of get them started, kind of separate from each other, just kind of kill a little time, and the other group does a straight shot down to Old Hill and get started. And by the time they move to Sleepy Hollow, Old Hill should be, I don't know, with that. And then you have two groups coming down the street.
The thing that is seeming a little tricky to me is that um, you're going to want an hour in Sleepy Hollow. You need an hour in
Right.
Sleepy Hollow just because of the distance you have to cover and the number of stories you have to tell in Sleepy Hollow. Um, Hill and South don't take as long. South particularly
Right.
doesn't
Right.
take very long. So even if we started everybody, in three different places, they wouldn't all rotate at the same time.
Yeah. Well, at least Sleepy Hollow, you can have three groups in it at one time. I
Yeah,
mean, you've done that before. You can be spread out. Someone's over at New Hill, someone's kind of Melvin, and someone's Author's Ridge.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
Um,
I almost think maybe, I don't know, maybe it's better to like tell the whole group or something, just like, an introduction about South, and just, maybe talk about the mill dam with the, the water and all that, like kind of tell that to everybody at the same time, maybe. And then the focus is on the other two. I don't know. The gravestones in there are, it's tight in there. And I feel like Whiting's a great story. I love that, but you can't even really see the marker really. I think there's a couple great stories in there. I really do, but I'm just thinking, I think it'd be easier not to have to go in there, walk all the way up, either way, where there's a lot of walking in between. That's kind of like, what's the gain, I guess. I don't know. That's just a thought.
I mean, we're certainly going to have time to do all three. The question is, how to do it, because they are unequal times. One thing when I don't do South that I sometimes do is to talk about Ephraim Brown, who isn't a really very important person. He's sort of down like near the houses. He's kind of down near the tomb that some people think Peter Bulkley is buried in, as sort of down near Colonel Barrett, that area, which is tough. If people have mobility issues, I don't take them down there because that's a tough climb. But Ephraim Brown lets me kind of jump off and talk about Whiting and Joseph Lee, because there's that story about how when a deacon, Ephraim Brown was a deacon, and when Joseph Lee tried to get back into the church after having quit with Whiting, and they wouldn't let him back in. The story goes, and I think this is from Shattuck. He bull raged Deacon Brown in the street. I don't know what bull raged means, but it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
So, you've got this connection, of Joseph Lee in the South Burying Ground and Ephraim Brown in the Hill Burying Ground, and that kind of connects to the story of Whiting. Again, that's pretty far down the rabbit hole. I don't know if these people are going to.
Yeah. No, I think with even like the Whiting, and you can talk about Daniel Bliss, tie that in, and I mean, to me, those in South, that's kind of like your meat and potatoes in that one. I mean, that's connected to your stories, like in the other, the other burial ground and so forth. So
Okay, what if we did like we did that big group of women and daughters? They're all at the visitor center. I'm gonna make this up now. Amy starts right away and takes a group to South because you have a fairly short South.
Right.
And Victor finds a spot somewhere near the visitor center, and you do your introduction about, Concord and what we're going to see today. And I do the same thing, but I do it a little away from you, maybe near the Millbrook, or maybe just so we're far enough away from each other. And then as soon as Amy's done, and then I'll go down to Old Hill and get started. And then Amy by then will be finished with South. Victor can move into South. And then Amy, you can follow me on your way down. And by the time you get to Old Hill, I'll be done, or at least in another part of it that you could start in the bottom, and we won't get into each other. And then we just continue from there, always kind of following each other.
So when do you do South then?
Then when I bring them back, I conclude at South and show them that might be a way to do it.
Yeah, that makes the most sense so far to me, to stagger it like that, because of all the walking and stuff, it would be like crossing each other, and it would just be weird.
Because you're short, your South will be short. Victor knows the most about South, so we probably shouldn't put him first, because you're probably gonna, of the three of us, you'll probably do the most.
I don't really spend that much time in South.
Oh, okay.
The one who really takes a deep dive in South is Beth Van Duzer.
Of course.
but she's not going to be doing this. So and I can stretch it out or condense it as necessary. logistically, I think that's a great idea. Here's my only worry is that South is the least compelling story. It's not a high note to end on.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
I usually Sleepy Hollow is a great high note to end on.
Yeah.
And so I would wonder if for this audience we would want to try and figure out some way for everybody to end up different. Yeah, I think I like that idea of somebody starting in South and then the other two groups doing kind of like a little warm up before. Um, so let's see.
Are there things though that, I mean, if I get, again, like if you're in there, okay, so Victor, when you're in South, what do you do?
I start out by saying, this is where you see some of Concord's oldest families, and there's
Right.
the stone there with the family names on them, and these are names you're going to see over and over again. I talk a little bit about the iconography of 17th and 18th century
Mm-hmm.
gravestones, and then as you get into the 19th century, you start to see the obelisk because there are some obelisks in there.
Okay.
And I talk about a few of the people that are in there who are connected to the events of April 19th. And let's see who have I got here. John Hosmer, L. Nathan Jones, um, um, I talk about the split of the first parish, or the first split of the first parish, with the John Whiting and the Black Forest Church, and I talk about Joseph Lee because he was kind of a big deal. But that's really it.
Yeah, I'm kind of almost feeling again like maybe there's just some introduction that we're giving and maybe highlight talking about the church more, because that, I feel like when you're talking about the church more and setting that up, then that kind of leads you to be able to talk about not only the Whiting story, but Daniel Bliss, and if they kind of have an understanding of the whole church, I think that's important.
And yeah, I'm just guessing here,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking if these people are cemetery professionals, they probably spend a lot of time working closely with churches, and so church politics might be interesting to them.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the information's interesting in terms of like the Whiting story, setting up the church, maybe giving a little Concord history. But when you actually go in there, like the Whiting gravestone or whatever, you can't really read it. Like to me, the whole, I
Yeah,
think it's a challenge to go in there. I personally,
yeah,
it's not a lot of, it's not a lot of.
yeah, apart from the iconography, it's not really object-based history.
Mhm.
Right.
So, I mean, I like the staggering part of it, but to lead them all in there to go, you're not, I mean, you're seeing it, but you're not, I don't know. I'm not sure. It just doesn't, it feels anticlimactic. I don't know if it's necessary to see it. I think you could tell people about the story. Mention that South burial ground, of course, was built because probably the first one was full. I mean, you can tell a lot of those things, but I don't know. I don't know if it's necessary.
One of the things that I do in between South and Hill is I use that to talk about two things, and I often will actually stop at Monument Square to do two things. First, to talk about indigenous burials, which we don't know a lot about, but it's important to mention the indigenous people. And second, to tell the story about the superstition about a funeral
Right.
in a body of water. That's place-based history. If you don't, but if you don't have to go to South to do that, you can do that going from the visitor center to Hillberry.
Well, that's my point. I think that's my point is like, maybe pick out, like, to me, like the Whiting story is, the whole church thing is very, to me, is like important, and mentioning maybe the old families and things like that. But I don't think you necessarily have to see it to hear that history, is my point. I think, we could all give introductions and in our own, and talk about that, or we give one introduction, but I don't know if it's necessary to show them that per se. I guess that's my point. Is like, you could give them an introduction and say, next door is the South Burial Ground, and maybe.
But today we're going to focus on the two most interesting burial grounds, Concord, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think we kind of need to give them some information about it. Maybe tell the story of Whiting. That would be my thing personally. Because you're tying in the whole church, you can tell about the mill dam, like Victor just said. We can all kind of have that, because I think the history of the church is so super important in this whole story as we go through these, burial grounds and whatnot. So maybe just have a good introduction with our groups. There it is. Maybe in the way back they could pop in if they want to see it, whatever. But that we're moving on with Old Hill and Sleepy Hollow.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm thinking about a way to kind of stagger this, so that maybe and I'm just making this up as I go along. So please chime in with your own ideas. One thing is, if say group one, whoever is leading group one, goes straight to Hill Burial Ground and starts there. Groups 2 and 3 can go to, say, one can go to like the battle monument in Monument Square, and the other can go to the front lawn of the First Parish or something like that. Or the Henry David Thoreau jail marker or something. Yeah. Someplace where you're far enough apart that you're not going to hear each other. And then after, say, 20 minutes, one of those groups then goes into Hill Burial Ground. The first group is still going to be there, but you can be, far enough apart. Then after another 20 minutes, the third group goes in, and the first group goes to Sleepy Hollow. So there's still only 2 groups in Hill Burial Ground. And the downside of that, as I see it, is group 3 has got a vamp for 40 minutes. So you're gonna tell a story of
did I tell you the one about, let me tell you another one.
You're gonna tell a story about Whiting, and you're gonna tell a story about the crossing Mill Dam and the indigenous people, but we
might start telling other Concord history, because I think they're in Concord. They know it's mostly a cemetery focus, but they're still going to want to know and be interested in good stories, I think. I like that. So one person, I'm going to say back what I think you said, one person goes to Old Hill, gets started there. Another person goes to Monument Square, for example, and a third person goes somewhere else. The lawn near the tree, hit the rose spot. We do our intros there.
I wanted to do someplace around the square just because that's scenic and it's historic.
Yeah.
We could do it on the front lawn of the visitor center, but all
your idea is better. I think it's
Banks and Cafe Hero. That's the ambiance isn't good.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense, and you can reference all of these things. You can show a picture if you want to talk. Like, I'm probably going to have a picture of the house. Where the Black church was or whatever. I mean, I think you can show pictures. I think being by a monument, like kind of borrowing a little bit from Joe's Twilight Tour, being by a monument, an obelisk, we can still talk about obelisks. Mm-hmm. We can still talk about memorials and how, memorializing kind of comes to be. We'll talk about that later. We can, and the church, and being by First Parish or any of that. Yeah. Reducing the church stuff. Yeah. I think that makes more sense, and we're getting away from the other side, but we can certainly reference it and talk about, there's a South Burial Ground if you want to take a peek, on your way back.
Yeah.
and you've covered stuff, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, what you're saying, I was just sort of thinking, okay, so one person is near the soldiers' monument in Monument Square, where's the other person? And it occurred to me that the other war memorials, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, that's all right next to the jail site.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about paying honor to the dead, even though they're not buried there,
Yeah.
that
still,
would
right.
that
That's
would
a good point.
make sense to be another place for somebody to start, because at least there's a thematic connection.
I like
Yeah.
that.
I think that's good too.
And of course, then the other thing is, if you're by the war memorials, you're also by the Jethro's Tree sign, which kind of gives you a segue into the indigenous people. And Joe, I don't know, I have just a small amount in this script, which you've probably seen, about the just a paragraph about the indigenous burials. I don't know, because you've been doing a lot of research in this area. Maybe you have more to say about that.
Well, from what Amy and I worked on this winter, what we know is probably what, I don't have your paragraph in front of me, but what we know is they were generally, we believe they were near the water. We have the archaeological evidence we do have from Shirley Blanke would be that there was a significant site kind of at the base of Punkatassett Hill on the other side of the river, sort of near the Great Meadows, that was discovered probably in the early 20th century when they were building homes. They believe there was a sweat lodge as well, based on what they found. And so that told them that usually if there was a sweat lodge, that meant it was a place you came for ceremonies. So probably there was more than one person buried there. They quickly, it's 1930, they just put everything back in the ground because they were building houses and they didn't want to they weren't being archaeologically, they're like, oh shit,
Didn't want to make
we gotta
it
sell
more
this house.
complicated than it had to be.
Right.
All
And
right.
then there's another site that Shirley mentions that was kind of near the far side of Egg Rock and on the peninsula there, and that's where they found some of the pestles that made them think there were women buried there.
Okay.
But that's all we really know, what I've learned. Amy, is there anything I left out that you usually say?
Oh, what I have, I mean, it's just apart from just sort of giving the basic fact that people have been living here for 12,000 years and that they are the ancestors of the Nipmuc and Wampanoag people, so that you can kind of make a connection to present history. And I'm looking on the wrong side of the page here. I don't even have it here. But I will find it. Yeah, and I can't remember my source for it. I will look it up, or maybe you already have it. Is that the native burials that were found were in the fetal position and facing west, I think, but I need to look that up.
Southwest, they said. I don't.
Southwest. And that when they were building some homes kind of up on the hill behind Sleepy Hollow, they discovered a burial site of what appeared to be indigenous people that had been buried straight in the European style. I don't really have much more than that. And again, if I can't find my source for that, I won't even say it. But I think we do want to mention that whatever the practice has been in the past, the current practice is when somebody finds an indigenous burial, they're not allowed to disturb it. That it's a sacred site. Where in the past, I think they would have just dug them up and built a house.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, I'm expecting these people are going to be quite familiar with that practice.
Yeah.
So we have got because I'm on the deadbeat Zoom plan, we're going to run out in about 7 minutes. So what I am going to do is to end the meeting and start it again. And
Okay,
so just look for me to log you back in a minute. Okay.